Our initial need in a relationship is to feel safe. We're always looking for safety in everything. Over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to introduce you to attachment styles. Now, you've probably heard this term being used. It's a very trendy term at the moment. It's actually almost like horoscope, astrological signs. People say, I'm avoidant anxious attachment style, which is like saying I'm a Taurus or a Gemini. It's actually not like that. It's a very well-researched body of work. Dr. John Bowlby, who was a British psychoanalyst and psychologist decades ago, he began to work on this theory about attachment. And attachment really begins in our childhood. It begins from the moment we're born. And for some of us, it actually begins in utero, how we're feeling safe and attached to our caregiver. So it's very interesting. It's now become something quite trendy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just want to give you some really valuable and interesting background on it to help you to become more aware of what your attachment style might be. And when you do, you then have the opportunity to heal from some of the attachment styles, because this is the most important thing I'm going to say about attachment styles. They are not fixed, okay? Just because you may at the moment be in an anxious avoidant attachment style doesn't mean that you can never be in a secure attachment to somebody else, which is the ultimate one. So there are basically 3 attachment styles. The first one is secure, which is what we all desire. We want to be securely attached to the other person. The other one is avoidant, when we are avoiding getting involved. We want to get involved. We may look like we want to get involved, but what we're doing is actually creating a wall so that we don't go too far because we don't want to get hurt. We don't want to be too vulnerable. And it's activating our greatest wound, which is the fear of abandonment. So let me go only so far with you in relationship. And if I'm feeling like I might get hurt, I'm going to pull back. I'm not going to allow myself to go into that space. So that's very basically what avoidant looks like. And the third one is ambivalent or anxious attachment. And this is usually comes from a childhood where the child was very confused about the parent's ability to connect. So let's say the child fell down in a playground and skinned its knee, and the mother or father were on their phone and they didn't come to help them, and the child was like shouting for help. And they were, I'll be there in a minute. Stop crying. Don't be dramatic. It's not a problem. You only fell down and hurt your knee. So the child is learning that in that moment, their needs aren't met. However, they might fall down again at a different time, and the parent is not on the phone or not doing something else and runs over to them, is very melodramatic and, oh, you poor thing, and hugs and kisses them and kisses their knee and takes them to be mended and buys them an ice cream or whatever. So then the child is like, oh, this feels really good. I like this. But then what happens is the parent caregiver goes back and forth with their attachment to the child, and the child then begins to feel anxious about attaching, because I don't want to get hurt. That's all we're ever worried about, is we don't want to get hurt. We don't want to feel abandoned. That is our deepest wound and our biggest fear. Because in reality, people think that they get into relationships to find happiness. That comes, our initial connection, our initial need in a relationship is to feel safe. We're always looking for safety in everything. Walking down the street, eating a meal, we're looking, smelling, tasting. Does it taste all right? Is it off? Should I have it? Shouldn't I have it? Our personal safety, our physical safety, our emotional safety. So in relationship, it's very much our emotional safety. Am I safe in this relationship? Can I trust this person? Will they look after me if I need them to look after me? Will they be there for me if I need them to be there for me? And I will be there for them. That's the healthy relationship, is the sharing of those 2 things. So what does it take to be in a secure, attached relationship? Well, the first thing it takes is awareness of the different types, as I'm identifying: secure, anxious, or avoidant. And there is a fourth, which is a hybrid. So you can be anxious avoidant. You can have a high percentage of one and a high percentage of the other, and you're not sure which one you are. So that would be an anxious avoidant attachment style. And that can be quite chaotic for the person because they're all over the place. But as I said earlier, the good news is that you can heal from this And I know because I personally have been on that journey. And when I was assessed, took a sort of test quiz on this, years ago, I was quite avoidant and chose people that were not available, because that made it easier to be avoidant. If they weren't available emotionally, physically, whatever, then I never really had to go into that space, completely into that space of feeling vulnerable and or abandoned. So that was me. And I recently, whilst working on this course and the things that I'm presenting to you, I recently was reassessed, and I'm now very much more heavily in a securely attached relationship. And I know that to be true on a daily basis because I'm living it, and I made a choice. I realized that I was the common denominator of all those other relationships that didn't work, and that I needed to start looking for different things to fulfill my needs and not the needs of others. So what does a secure attachment style look like? You have long-term relationships. There's a lot of trust. You know when to give each other space. You honor each other's needs. You have a strong sense of self-esteem, and you feel comfortable sharing. You engage in healthy social interactions. You seek to repair, and you accept the other person repairing as well. So you keep your mind open, your heart open. You enjoy play and laughter. You feel compassion for yourself and for other. You consider your partner, but not at the expense of yourself. And this is super important. A secure attached relationship will be when you feel secure in yourself. Remember, there's not two halves that make a whole. So it's not your other half or your better half. Two whole people come into a relationship and create an entity that never existed before. And that is ideally what a healthy, secure relationship looks like. That's what you're striving for. And it is always possible because we have neuroplasticity of the brain, which allows our brain to reshape, to morph, to change, to learn new behaviors, because all this is a behavior that's attached to two things. So our attachment styles come from watching our parents relate to each other, what their relationship is like, because we learn so much from them, and also our relationship with our parent, our mother, and our father. Even if our father or mother is absent, that is still a relationship, as dysfunctional as it is, that we are having with them. So this is how we develop our attachment style. If you are avoidant, I'm going to go through some of those very quickly. You will build walls and you will create problems so as not to attach to a person. You may overfocus on self. You may have difficulty with maintaining eye contact. Now, not all of these pertain to everybody. Some people have some of them, but not all of them. You may have difficulty expressing yourself, and you feel it's better to keep your feelings to yourself. You may search out faults in the relationship. There may be a lot of self-sabotage because you believe you have a set of beliefs and values where all men are losers, or all women are this, or all whatever. That was one of my beliefs. And I made it true because I kept finding the people that weren't right for me. And of course, it didn't work and I lost. And that's how I felt at the end of it. But not anymore. You may choose another insecure person to be in a relationship, because we tend to attract people at the same level of trauma that we are at that time before we emotionally evolve and move on. Your friends and lovers may tell you that you give them mixed signals. So you show love and you get really involved and really excited about it, and then it gets a little bit too scary, and then you pull back. So the one hand, you're really in this loving relationship, and then you just pull back, and the person on the other side is like, do they not like me anymore? And if they're anxious attachment, which is very possible that an avoidant and an anxious attachment person might get into relationship with each other, then you're really setting off their triggers and they're becoming highly activated. You might overanalyze the relationship that you're in, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for them to make a mistake, to screw up, because that's what you expect. You may live in your head and not be present. You might be even in bed with them and thinking of a past relationship or a past lover, or fantasizing, because you're not really securely attached to the person that you're with. You're not being present with them at that time. So that's a very quick overview of that attachment style. The other one is anxious or ambivalent. And this, you may have a constant need to connect with your partner. This can have a lot of smothering and involved in it, where you want to spend every waking moment and sleeping moment with the person. You really don't ever want them out of your sight. You hate it when they go away. In fact, they go on a business trip and you fall apart. You don't eat, you don't sleep. I'm going to the extremes, but that's very much what this looks like. You keep score. You remember, like, a month ago when you said you were going to take me to that restaurant, and I've been waiting, and you've forgotten about it, haven't you? You've never taken me. I've been waiting and you haven't done it. So what does that mean? You know, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? Why don't you take me to that restaurant the way you promised? And they have completely forgotten about something that they promised you, but you hang on to these things because you're so anxious. You're like, you're hyper vigilant about everything that they do and that they say. You have a crippling fear of losing your partner, so much so that you actually eventually drive them away. And as I say, possibly self-sabotage. You often grow feelings of anxiety and disappointment, which can turn into anger and fear and frustration. And your partner doesn't even know what they've done, but there you are flying off the handle with them. You might, as I say, unconsciously smother your partner to the point that you drive them away. And they, you know, you're like this, constantly smothering them, and they can't get any air. They have nowhere to go because you need them. You need them to validate you constantly. So this is a very quick overview. I'm going to go in the next week into each one of them a little bit more, and I'm going to give you some tips on what they really look like and how to heal them. And I'm going to be really diving very deeply into this on my upcoming course, so watch this space for that. Stay safe. Thank you for coming with me on this journey today.